I'm just going to leave you at it.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so as Rob said, I'm Lindsey Parziale, and basically I'm going to tie in, like, why have we been talking about all this crazy, like, water and forest stuff? What does it all kind of come together to? So I'm pretty sure a lot of you would be familiar with the stat from the Gulf of Maine Research Institute that over the course of a decade, the Gulf of Maine has warmed faster than 99% of the global ocean. This is obviously a very scary thing for us as New Englanders to see because this is our immediate water source. So what I am going to show you all is that the actual reasons behind this can be lost in the constant headlines about global warming and greenhouse gases. While those do obviously have an effect on this, there are a lot of other reasons for this extraordinary phenomenon. So I'm going to show you all 4 different factors that have to really do with this crazy surface water rise. So that would obviously be the surface water temperature, along with heat severity, air temperature, and rainfall, all monthly for 5 years. So mine will be full of a lot of fun charts and maps and data sets, so hopefully we can get through it all still with a smile on our face at the end. So basically, these are 2 charts that you are going to be very familiar with by the end of my presentation. And basically, these are just 2 snapshots from June 2024, which we all just recently experienced. And on the left, you can see the surface water map. And basically, it is a sort of like color scale going from a dark purple to a really dark red. So this scale basically goes from 32 degrees Fahrenheit up into 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And I will explain like what the colors more are like per each slide. And then as we move on to the chart on the right here, this is total precipitation. And the scale goes from a dark red to a dark green, meaning that more rainfall equals a greener, darker green color. Moving on, this is heat severity charts from 2019 to 2023. Now, heat severity is basically a scale of air temperature and land surface temperature brought together, and it goes from this kind of yellow color to that really scary red. So basically, that really scary red is not what we want to be seeing, but basically what is to be taken away from these charts is that we're seeing a lot of heat severity in very dense areas, like cities and such. So you can even see in 2019 when heat severity is relatively low, it's yellow around New York, it's yellow around Boston and Worcester and Springfield, going along with what Miriam was talking about earlier with impervious surfaces, concrete, gray infrastructure will lead to this heat severity. And then this is a chart of the right whales. So this was where the right whales were in June, which is very fun to look at. And they get denser the warmer the color gets. So you can see they really like to hang out. Below Nantucket right here. And then in June, they are right past the outer Cape. A lot of fun. And then these are some average temperature and precipitation charts. Just to, as you all know, New England can be very temperamental when it comes to temperature and precipitation. And really the biggest thing I wanted to take away from showing these charts was just that July has a lot of variation with precipitation. You can see 2019, nothing too crazy. 2020, not really anything. 2021, a lot of precipitation, and 2022, barely any, with 2023 being that crazy summer of rain, remember last year? So yeah, this was just a reminder that these seasons do vary a lot month by month, but the important thing about New England is that when we see things happening year after year, that's when it's really important to pay attention to. So moving on, this is pretty much what the rest of my presentation will look like. We have the surface water maps right above here. Those black splotches they don't mean super cold water like you might think. They just mean there's some sort of lapse in data. The camera's GIS wasn't working too well that month, I guess. But yeah, so the biggest thing, basically I'm just going to take you through the months with the biggest observation, the most important thing. So really with January, we see a really dry 2022 with a very cool surface water temperature. This is something that is going to be quite a theme throughout the rest of the presentation. So keep looking out for that. And then here, this is usually what the right whales like to do. They really hang out around Cape Cod Bay. That's where the sanctuary is proposed, and they're extremely dense right off of Nantucket. So right in our Massachusetts waters, and then a little bit southern of Maine as well. So just really the entirety of the Gulf of Maine is really important for the right whale. Moving on to February, there's not really a lot of variation in these winter months with surface water temperature. But the good thing is that we see a pretty cool 2024, which is great because if we go back to our heat severity maps, things are only getting hotter. So it's always really promising to see things actually getting cooler. Every once in a while is nice. And then March again doesn't have a lot of variation with surface water temperatures. The biggest thing would be that 2023 is a really high precipitation year, with it being a relatively warm surface water temperature year comparatively, but then again, not a lot of variation with the surface water. Once again, April, not much going on, but the most interesting thing is that we really start to see the whales all over Cape Cod Bay, and they are still always going to be right here below Nantucket, but we start to see them moving over to the east, which is really interesting. May is when we really start to see the surface water temperature begin to increase. So once again, the driest and the coolest surface water year is 2020. You can see this kind of darker blue. Now, that dark blue is around 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and it rarely gets to a lighter blue, which is around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's really good to see that it's nice and cool there with not a lot of rain. And then the whales still moving over to the east a bit. June is when things get really exciting because we really start to see the heat coming and a good amount of precipitation as well. So the biggest thing would be, once again, we're seeing the driest and coolest in 2020, so not a lot of precipitation and a relatively cool surface water temperature. Yeah, and you can really start to see now we're seeing yellow around Cape Cod, which is really interesting. That yellow temperature is around 68 degrees Fahrenheit, so we're starting to get a little hot, and especially around from like southern New Hampshire down to Cape Cod. It's this like greenish color, which is around 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Whales, once again, are continuing their move to the northeast. In July, I love looking at these charts for July. They're just really fun. There's a lot going on in July, and really the biggest thing is that we're starting to see orange. Very exciting. So orange is around 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and the biggest thing would be that 2023, that monster precipitation year, is just crazy. How we're seeing the immediate effects of all of this precipitation right in the Gulf of Maine. So you can even notice that around Cape Cod, it's getting to that dark orange, which is getting closer to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So just extremely warm waters. And even, once again, like outside of Boston and southern New Hampshire, seeing a lot of orange. Once again, whales are moving to the northeast. But it's just really scary seeing 2023 have all of this orange in it. And that has to do with all of the crazy rain we got. Moving on to August, we see a lot of orange here as well. The coolest and driest years, definitely 2019 to 2021 for sure. And then the whales have officially gone up north, so they're surrounding Nova Scotia right here because, as you can see, the surface water temperature is just getting way too hot. Even in some of these cooler years, it is just way too hot for the whales, but they still love hanging out past Nantucket, so that's always great to see. On to September 2022 is the wettest year that we see, all this green. And then it's also the warmest with a lot of these yellow colors and most of the Gulf of Maine being green. So this would be around like 60 to 68 degrees. Pretty warm for September. And the whales are still up north, but they love hanging out around Nantucket. So that's always fun. And then October is just always crazy to look at. As we all know as New Englanders, October can either be super hot or it can have snow. So there's really no way to tell what October is going to bring, but what we see is that 2021 has a lot of precipitation and warm temperatures in the Gulf of Maine. Also with 2019 having a ton of precipitation, but interestingly enough, not a super hot surface water temperature year. That's when we look at the scale of it. I know you all can't see it, but it only goes up to 7 inches in 2019, whereas over in 2021, it goes up to 8. So there was more precipitation in 2021, despite it looking like there was more in 2019. So once again, more precipitation, hotter waters. On to November. There's a lot of variation in the surface water temperature, again, kind of going along with October. 2023 is the coolest and driest month that we have, and then we really start to see the whales coming back to the Gulf of Maine. They're always in their favorite spot, but it's always good to see them right in the south of Maine as well. And then we made it to December. So once again, a lot of variation in the surface water temperature, but most important is that 2021 is the warmest surface water year along with the wettest precipitation year. And the whales are very much back in their favorite places in the Cape Cod Bay, below Nantucket, and in the south of Maine. Great. So what was the point of all this? All these crazy pictures. Basically, the idea is that we know New England seasons show a lot of variation, but what we continue to see throughout several months in different years is increased land temperature, which is up here. This is 2023. That these increased land temperatures and high precipitation levels lead to really high surface water temperatures. So I feel like it is very starkly shown in this comparison of July 2023, which is up top, versus July 2021. So these are the same month, just in different years, and we can see how having more precipitation and higher land surface temperatures leads directly to this really high surface water temperature in the Gulf of Maine. And this is exactly what we've been experiencing and why all of this forest talk is really important, and what Miriam was saying about slowing the water down and getting these communities to invest in more green infrastructure is really important because this is exactly what we've been seeing. Thank you.